My boyfriend lived in a small, isolated town of Winvale. Everyone seemed to be friendly and knew each other. It was my first time visiting him in his hometown, but I was greeted with a warm welcome from his friends and family. In the evening, we took a walk for him to show me all the cute little shops and places he loved so much. I fell in love with a little flower shop plus the owner. Mrs. Grayson was really sweet. "Here you go, Madison. Take this pretty flower with you," she said, handing me a yellow rose. I smiled and told her thanks, and so did Jason. "Mrs. Grayson, I want you to make a beautiful bouquet for Madison," Jason told her, and it made me blush. "I will. You can pick it up tomorrow." We told her we would see her soon and left the flower shop. On the way out, Jason bumped into a girl. They seemed to know each other, but their exchange was awkward and brief. He took my hand and quickly led me away without even introducing me to the girl. When we got back to his house, I asked him who she was. "Oh, she was just an old friend. She used to date my friend back in high school, but they ended on bad terms." "So, you sided with your friend?" I asked, and he laughed. "I sure did," he replied. "That was understandable. I would have sided with my friend also. We went to dinner and his mom told me all the embarrassing stories about Jason while he was growing up. She had me laughing throughout dinner. It was time for bed and I went to use the bathroom. I heard something like twigs breaking outside. I looked through the window and saw a figure standing across the street from Jason's house. It had on full black clothing and I wasn't able to see a face. "Jason!" He came rushing into the bathroom. I didn't take my eyes off the figure, but by the time Jason came, it had vanished. "I don't see anything," he said, but I just kept pointing. Not a word could come from my mouth. He convinced me that my mind was playing tricks on me, and I believed him and went to sleep. When I got up in the morning, I couldn't help feeling a little scared about what I saw. I mentioned it to Jason again, and he reassured me that it was nothing. After breakfast, he told me that he had to go out of town for an hour, but he didn't want to bring me on a long, boring drive. So his mother promised to take me into town for supplies. She needed to do some baking. I was more excited about that than driving back and forth with Jason for hours. His mom and I got into town around midday to get the items she needed for her cakes. I remembered that Jason was supposed to pick up the flowers from Mrs. Grayson, so I told his mom that I would be by the flower shop if she needed me. When I got there, Mrs. Grayson was nowhere in sight, but an old man was around the counter. "Hello, is Mrs. Grayson here?" "She will not be in today. Can I help you?" the man asked. "I was supposed to pick up some flowers from her today, but I will be back. Hopefully she will be here tomorrow." I proceeded to leave. "If it's urgent, you can walk around the back and through the gate from the greenhouse is her home. Across the street, it's not far from here," he said. I didn't think that was a good idea to just intrude on someone like that, but then again, this was friendly town. I wanted Jason to be proud that I did something while he was away. I took initiative like he always said I should do. "Well, can you show me?" He smiled at me and told me to follow him, and I did. We walked to the back of the shop, which had the greenhouse attached to it and a gate that led to another side of the street. "That's her house right there," the man pointed. "I hope she won't be upset that I show up at her house uninvited." "No, she won't be. Customers always do, and she loves the company." I told him thanks, then stepped through the gate and head across the street to Mrs. Grayson's house. I knocked on the door twice, and she answered on the second knock. "Hello, dear," she said with a pleasant smile as she opened the door. "Hi, Mrs. Grayson. I am Jason's girlfriend, Madison, from yesterday." "Oh yeah, I remember your pretty face. Are you here to pick the flowers up?" "Yes, is it ready?" "Yes, you can come in," she replied. I took the invitation and stepped inside the little house. It was so warm inside and cozy. She led me to the kitchen area where she had a table filled with flowers. "These are beautiful," I said. "These are for some customers. I am behind schedule because of a pain in my hand, but I can manage," she said. I felt sorry for her because she seemed to be alone. I looked around and noticed that there wasn't any pictures on her walls or anything to suggest that she had a family. "Don't you have anyone to help you?" "Not at all. Everyone is busy with their lives." "Wait right here. I am going for my bigger clippers," she said, then disappeared. The wind blew some flowers off the table. I picked them up from the ground and went to close the window. Upon closing the window, something caught my eyes. It was a girl, sitting by a window in an old big house. She waved at me and I waved back. The large window she was sitting by overlooked an overgrown garden. Draped by tattered curtains, she moved them, and started to write on the window until she formed the word run. An eerie atmosphere suddenly surrounded me, and I felt my head starting to get a little light. I jumped from a touch on my shoulder. I spun around to see Mrs. Grayson holding her clippers. "I found them," she said. "Do you know her?" I asked as I pointed out the window. "Who?" she asked. I looked, and there was no one sitting there anymore. The curtains were closed, and even the word run was gone. A girl was just sitting right there. She waved to me. Mrs. Grayson chuckled. "You must have seen a ghost. No one has lived there for years now," she said. Sweat started to form on my forehead. There was no way I saw a ghost. I didn't even believe in ghosts. "Why did they abandon such a big house?" I asked. Now I was curious to know. I followed her back to the table. The Thompsons, a family of 3, settled into the mansion with hopes of a fresh start. Emily, their teenage daughter, was drawn to a room with the window. Emily found herself mesmerized by the view from her window. She would always sit there. One night, as Emily stood by the window, she noticed a faint glow in the distance, something she always spoke about. This time, unable to resist it, as she was trying to reach out to it, she fell from the window and died. Some say she jumped and others said she was pushed. No one really knows. Her parents moved away from the house and never returned. Wow, that is sad, but I know what I just saw. A girl was sitting at the window. Now I was wondering if my mind was playing tricks on me. First it was last night, now today. Something was really creepy about Winvale. Mrs. Grayson smiled and handed me the bouquet of flowers. "Here you go, take this with you. Jason is a very nice boy." I took the flowers and I thanked her. She followed me to the door, and on my way out, my eye caught a picture of a girl on a little table. She looked exactly like the girl Jason bumped into. "I saw her yesterday. Is that your daughter?" I asked. She looked at the picture, then back at me. "No, that's my granddaughter. Have a wonderful time here," she said, then led me outside the house. As I crossed the street to enter the little gate, I looked back at the window of the old house and noticed that the word evil was written on it. I looked back at Mrs. Grayson's house and saw her looking directly at the window and smiling. When she saw me looking at her, she too wrote the word run, waved at me, and closed the curtains. I made my way back through the gate, into the greenhouse and into the store. When I got there, the man was gone and I was locked inside the store. In a panic, I tried to break the glass door with a flower pot so I could flee. "Hey, don't break that," I heard a girl's voice. I turned to look, and it was the girl Jason bumped into yesterday, the same girl from the picture at Mrs. Grayson's house. "Let me out," I shouted at her. "Sure, calm down," she said. She walked towards the door and pulled the lock. I opened the door and hastily stepped outside. "Are you okay?" she asked. At this point, I didn't want to talk to anyone here. "I am fine," I replied, then walked away to find Jason's mom. My plan was to keep silent about everything I saw, pack my bags, and leave. I will tell Jason everything when he calls. There was something about Winvale, and I didn't want to stick around to find out.